And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Vincent Genna, internationally acclaimed psychic therapist, psionic, spiritual master, and author. He has been contacted by the Intergalactic Council, which we're going to learn about and more. Vincent, welcome back. It's great to see you, my friend.
Jeff, it's always great to be here. Even just to have a conversation with you is always exciting and energetic. So I get filled with that. So thank you.
Well, I think it's really cool that we're going to be talking about ETs today because this is a completely new direction for us.
Totally is. And I'm actually even more excited because I remember when I was younger, the only thing that I got into ETs about was the movies, and I just loved them and accepted them right away. You know, there were some of my favorite movies out there, right? Close Encounters and ET and Cocoon. That was a fabulous one. I absolutely loved. So I always had a fascination, even though I didn't have my own experiences back then.
Now, weren't you together recently with George Norrie talking about ETs?
We were. I had been on his television show. We talked about them a few times. I was on his radio show. And when I was on Beyond Belief on Gaia TV, we definitely talked about that. And I was explaining how this started for me and then what they were telling me. And the fabulous thing is that, and you know this, that the only way that a psychic or psionic can be validated is by some kind of evidence that shows what he or she is saying is valid, right? That there's something backing it up. And so when I was telling him some of the things that they were telling me about their coming here, they're very friendly. They've always wanted to help. They've been here since the beginning of time. He would cut to some previous scientist or doctor or expert from the past several years, that they recorded this interview and he was playing it and saying the exact same things that I was saying about where they were coming from and that they came from different dimensions, not locations, you know, things like that. And so every time he did that, it made me feel more sane because even though I'm psychic, you know, and I also communicate with animals, right? So I see dead people and I'm talking with them. But then all of a sudden, this intergalactic council starts talking with me. And even I think I'm going nuts. My daughter was so funny because she said, Dad, when I shared it with her, she said, I think we need to have a family intervention here. I said, wait a minute. I said, I talk with dead people and animals. That you thought was normal, but now because that aliens are talking to me, that's not so normal anymore. Huh? She says, I don't know. You're just way out there now and you're getting everything. And I'm like, yes, we become antennas. And I've been doing this work for 42 years. So I would expect that my antenna is way out there. My ability is out in the cosmos and can communicate with these extraterrestrials.
How did you transition from dead people to ETs, and when did this begin?
Well, it's actually now several years ago. I had just finished a client reading, right? So, of course, the senses were open. And when I do a client reading, not only do I do psychic stuff on their past, their present, their future, the things they have to unblock and heal, but also deceased loved ones will come in and help me with those messages. And so I'm an evidential medium and I get that information. So I had just finished one of those readings and it went really well. And I was just packing my stuff up, turning things off and getting ready to go have dinner. And all of a sudden I hear, we would like to speak with you. And I'm like, we would like to speak with you. Who's we? And I wasn't getting a feeling that it was a normal spirit, a deceased loved one of somebody, or even my own relatives that are coming to me. And I was questioning it who's speaking to me. It was, you know, I looked over at my plants and I was wondering, now all of a sudden I'm a botanist and I'm a tree whisperer. And I was looking and said, you know, no, it's not them, it's us. They clarified. And I said, who is us? And they said, we're an intergalactic council. That's exactly what they said, intergalactic council. And I was like, you do realize I wasn't a Star Trek fan. I was more of a Star Wars fan. And they're saying, not that type of intergalactic council. We don't look like that. I'm like, well, thank goodness. Okay, so no spiders or men with lizard heads or anything like that. No. And so I said, why are you speaking with me? And they told me we need to educate you as to who we are and why we've been coming to your Earth dimension, because there is too much negative information out there about us, and our visitations are increasing in order to be able to help humanity. And you are a speaker, and you are public, and you are also accepting of who we are. So that's why we've decided to come to you. Now, Jeff, understand something about my mediumship. I consider it a great honor when there is a deceased loved one or spirit that is willing to use me as a conduit to speak with their daughter, their partner, their child, or their husband or spouse, whatever, their friend. And I feel that that's an honor. And I've done everything I can to stay as genuine as possible to allow that to happen. And so when they came to me, I was feeling a little weird over the fact that this is the first time, and I'm saying just a few years ago, and this is not 40 years ago. So within the past 5 years now is when they started speaking with me. And so I didn't question it. I went with it to see what they were going to say, and it's been an adventure ever since.
Now, for the skeptics out there, is it possible that it could be some sort of dark entity playing games with you?
Okay. First of all, I've worked with many a dark entity. I was a medium that was brought to haunted places with negative ghosts as well as positive ghosts. And when I say ghost, we're using that word, but they are spirits that, just like us, they're souls that never made it to the heavenly dimensions, because there are several dimensions and there are several earthly dimensions. They got stuck in the earthly dimensions because of their tragic death, how they died, who they were. And so they didn't go into that light that is kind of like an express train to the heavenly realms. They didn't do that. So they got stuck here. That's what I'm referring to. And yes, there are negative ones, but I don't fear them, and they have absolutely no control over me. And because my work, and I've done such positive, loving work, that has become an automatically shield for me. There's no negative entity that has ever tried to manipulate me and talk with me, because my intuition is such that can tell the difference right away. And everybody has that ability. And just the mere fact that I don't allow negativity and energies to come to me and approach me unless I approach them, I know it's not going to happen. So to the skeptic out there, you're going to think what you're going to think. That's what makes you skeptical to start with, is there is a negative foundation within you. And that's why some on this planet believe that the ETs are negative and malevolent instead of benevolent. And because of where they're coming from, you're always filtering your questions. So the funny thing is that if you're skeptical and have to say that to me, then you have more of a problem of some entity that is going to manipulate you than me, because I remain positive you've been negative. So no, there is no possible way that a negative entity is talking to me. No harm has come to me or my family or anybody else because of my connection with them.
What ET races are represented by this council?
There are 7 beings on this council, but they tell me that there are only 12 species. Everybody would like, well, there are ufologists and those who have been studying supposedly ETs and UPAs, which are UFOs, from the past terminology, right? And they would like to think that there's hundreds and hundreds of entities, kind of like the Star Trek television series. We always saw a new entity, and the Galactic Council, the Federation, was made up of all these different kinds of races and stuff. No, there's actually only 12 that I've been told, which is why The number 12 is a spiritual number, and it's everywhere in our history, especially in the Bible. It's a very high spiritual number, and that's probably the reason why, is because unconsciously we know that there's only 12 kinds of beings and species that were created, but 7 of them are represented in this council. And there's a couple of them that will represent, a few others, so that matches 12 altogether, but only 7 want to actually be the talkers and the guiders. That's what they are. They guide. The Intergalactic Council is a spiritual council in between incarnation lives. And so they're the in-between life, for those of us who understand reincarnation, and that you go to that realm and you're in that in-between state until you try to figure out if you want to incarnate someplace else. But that in-between state is actually home, and where we're all meant to go back to eventually without reincarnating anywhere else. So those are the ones that have been talking to me. So they've also been explaining what we believe to be Palladians and Arturians that are in our universe and galaxy, all right? And it's completely untrue. What they have told me is that our universe is a life form unto itself. We tend to think that the planets and the stars are all individual separate pieces, but that's what we think anyway. We think of separation because we separated from our source, the God source. We separate from each other. So now we're looking at everything as a separate part of us, rather than that is one whole living body, the universe, and that whole living body is to support humankind. That's what that all is. So there is no other species that lives in our universe. There are other universes in other dimensions, and their universes support their species. So there truly then are only 12 major universes that are out there in the dimensions, in the cosmos, wherever we would like to think. There had been other dimensions and part of those dimensions that no longer exist, which is what a black hole is, Jeff. A black hole, they explained to me, which makes so much sense. It's a universe where the species no longer needs to incarnate on it. So because they are no longer using that planet within that universe, the universe folds into itself because it no longer supplies or is being supplied the energy and the life form from our incarnating on it. And it's not us, you and me. We don't incarnate on any other planet.
Now, if the universe only supports humans, and our universe is very big, is it possible there are other humans on other planets that are also being supported?
Interesting question, right? Okay. There's always that thought of that, right? And they think that they are, again, maybe advancements of who we are. They're even thinking that some of these ETs are coming back from our future. And nobody has ever asked that question. Are there other humans living on some of those other planets that are out there? No, there's just us. There's no other reality. And the interesting part is, if you see some of the stories, some of the new television shows, some of the new movies, all about other dimensions and aspects of the earth, and that there is another Jeff and there's another Vincent in some other universe or part of this earth that is also duplicated, but living a different life form. It's very interesting that we get that concept, but here's where that concept comes from. The past, the present, and the future is not linear. They're locations. That was actually written up in the New York Times several years ago. I came across that after I came out with that understanding. And the dimensions are right on top of each other. So when you're poking in and when you're using your imagination and creating stories about that, what you're actually creating stories about is not other earthly versions of us. It's actually other times of us, our past and our future. So there's basically three of us going on at the exact same time. And so you can poke in one way and the other way. By the way, that's what deja vu is if you accidentally poke into the future dimension of you, and you come back into this one and it's really rapid, so rapid, and you go, wait a minute, I just experienced this before. It's like I've been doing this before. Wow, that's very intuitive and psychic. We're open, so that's going to happen. We're going to poke in. So that's what you are seeing and what everybody is interpreting as other life forms and being on other planets. No, this is the only supported life form. But here's the interesting thing. And we know this in science. Without those other planets, without the sun, without the pull, the gravitational force that is keeping us going around and rotating around the sun and all those other planets that are out there in alignment, the Earth would not be what it is today. It would not be able to support the life that it supports today. We always talk about their effect on us. That's why astrology is all about the understanding of that concept, that every single planet, every single star, and they're discovering even more. They add them on as nodes, they add them on as all these things and aspects, right? They are all in alignment for us. And it's very hard to believe that this great big universe is just here for us. Many would think that that's very egotistical and arrogant. However, whatever needs to support us, we have co-created with Source to be able to sustain us, which is why we're worth keeping and why our extraterrestrial brothers and sisters are coming here to help us.
So are you saying then that all ETs are extra dimensional?
They're all extra dimensional. Every single one of them doesn't come from here. And they're also, I said earlier, benevolent. And Albert Einstein knew that. He specifically said that in order for an ET, an extraterrestrial, or another species to escape their universe and travel here, they would have to have command of spiritual principles and understanding, which is why we now have evidence of that. Okay, Jake Barber was on news channel in an interview, and he's being interviewed on so many, and he's even going to be at Contact in the Desert, right? He was talking about his experience while he was collecting crashed or downed UAPs for the government. He worked for the government, and it was basically almost secretive, obviously. And in one of the expeditions he had in collecting this downed craft, it was a big craft, he made a connection with a life force that was in it, and he called it a female energy. And it overwhelmed him so much because it filled him with love and peace. He said it was spirit and like connecting with God. And while he was describing it on this news interview, he was crying because it was so special. It was magnificent. That's who we all are, advanced. And what he did is he connected to a soul, a loving, wonderful soul. And he kept saying that it was sadness as well as there was joy. Yes, it was sadness because the soul crashed here. she crashed to craft, and she was going to die because they cannot live in our life form because of all the biology that's here that they have rid in their universes and planets that's going to affect them. We created all of this biology, okay? There is consciousness understanding and advancement of consciousness that's been out there, and even Michael Beckwith has spoke about it in his services and stuff, the four conscious beliefs that we have to evolve to. The first one is the to me, belief. The to me belief is about victimization. You think that everything is happening to you and you have your pity party. It's the lowest consciousness that we can have. Then we keep coming back and we're trying to evolve more. So we evolve up to the for me consciousness, which now people believe, well, things are happening for me, for my advancement, for my help. Whatever it is, even if it's negative, it's for me because I'm going to grow getting through that challenge, right? Then the third consciousness is through me, the understanding that the only reason why I have all this ability is because source in the universe is working through me. But the highest consciousness and the most difficult one to get to is the as me conscious, the conscious understanding. As me means we are everything. God's source, we believe, is part of everything. This source, this force, George Lucas called it the force, and Yoda always kept talking about how the force is part of everything. It's in the trees, it's in the animals, it's in us. And now we're co-creators that were created from this source, which means we also are everything. They abduct to take some of the genetic material and to work with it again because they did it in the very beginning. That's why modern humankind came out. Back 11,000 years ago. And this modern man is not older than 11,000 years. It's about 11,000 years. Our measurement system is completely off, just so that you know. That's the first thing they wanted to say, right? It's like the earth and your life on it isn't as old as you think it is. You're measuring wrong, but that's okay. That doesn't matter here or there. What does matter is that you're taking forever to evolve. And so that's what the problem is. We are not evolving fast enough, and they have. And the interesting things, those Palladians that people have seen, they're not from our universe. We were made to believe they were so that they could help us. They're actually our ET brothers and sisters from those other dimensions, but they're them before they completely evolved. They were able to put their life form back in their past bodies just to make it easy for us to deal with. So think about back in the days of Egypt, right? When those pyramids are being created. Now all of a sudden extraterrestrials come down. If they look like the grays we see today, or the aliens we see today with the skinny bodies, big head, big eyes, do you think we would have listened to them at all? No. Who did we listen to? And we always paint these portraits of these beautiful people and these beautiful spiritual leaders. Jesus was beautiful. All of these spiritual leaders. Well, they came down looking like the Palladians to make it easy for us to accept them and work with them. And that's what happened. And they were beautiful beings and gentle. We even called them, they all look Swedish to me. That's why I've got to go to Sweden, because they all look like Palladians over there. They're gorgeous, right? The blue eyes, the long blonde hair. They're even in Lord of the Rings as a character. They're the elves, right? And so those are actually the ETs, but before they fully evolve to the bodies that they're in now. So it's not that it's us, it's not another species, it's them from their past coming to communicate with us. That's how they got the relationship going and why we trusted them. And then also they taught us how to become light beings. The Mayans knew that. They worked with the Mayans and visited the Mayans. That's why there are no Mayan bodies around. The Mayans were able to accept their spiritualness way before we are. And though they learned how to become light beings. So there's almost all this information about it. So yes, so a black hole is a universe no longer incarnated on, and therefore it self-destructs. It self-destructs, and what you see is nothing. If you go through a black hole, you're going to come out on another end of nothingness. There's nothing there. And yeah, that was a Star Trek movie. I remember that one. They actually traveled through the black hole. And that's what humankind is trying to do, is go to another dimension. We won't be able to do that, Jeff. We won't be able to do that because we don't have spiritual concepts down. They're not studying quantum physics enough. They're thinking that they're going to build an intergalactic spaceships, which they are doing right now, by the way. It's why they've done a lot of reverse engineering on downed craft, because they're trying to figure out their propulsion and how they maneuver, right? Because they want to use it for their intergalactic craft. It's like the movie that the Earth is going to be destroyed, but only some people are going to be alive, and they're going to save all the wealthy and the scientists, but everybody else can go, and they're going to go to another planet and create life there. That's what they actually think they're going to do. It's not going to happen. We're wasting so much time on trying to protect and save ourselves and save themselves, rather than heal what you have right here and right now. And that's why we're going to hell in a handbasket, basically. That's what they tell us.
So all these downed craft that they've captured are interdimensional crafts then?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so that makes sense. Now, some people believe that we are all hybrids here on this planet. So would you say that ETs would leave their dimensions, come here and tinker with us, and then go back?
Because we were staying Neanderthal too long. And we weren't going to survive based on all the other stuff, and we were evolving so slowly. And so what they did, and science has shown, and I don't remember, I know I read it in, and Greg Braden, who is an anthropologist, he spoke about this in a couple of his lectures that I heard him, and when I worked with him, speak at. And he said that they had discovered a Neanderthal baby in 2006 that was frozen in some place. I forgot where he said it was. And they studied the baby and the DNA and realized it wasn't the same DNA. So that's when they came out and saw that our current DNA, only a portion of it, a very small portion of it, is the same as that Neanderthal baby's DNA. But they don't say where the rest of the DNA came from. It came from our alien brothers and sisters, because that was going to allow us to quickly evolve then. And science has shown, and I have heard this, oh my God, I was a kid when I was hearing this, that there was modern man, right? And that all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it appeared on the planet. They can't see how it evolved, and they can't say that the Neanderthal evolved to modern man, because it would have taken much longer for that process to occur. It stopped. The Neanderthal stopped at one point that came from the earth, and then all of a sudden modern man appeared. And so what was that modern man? And that modern man was the splicing and the advancement, so that we could now evolve and advance from that place rather than the slow place we started at. But the problem is, as in reincarnation, we took too much of that archaic Neanderthal mindset. So even though modern man came around, we were still too attached to the earth and the physicalness of it, which is what kept us paying attention to the spiritual aspect of who we were. So two things happened. So yes, modern man was created, but I believe then that's when we separated from the God source and never realized that we were these divine, magnificent beings. And then we took it from that place, which is the reason why we have to ask ourselves, all right, if these beings are so advanced, why are we so unadvanced? And the answer is they focused on their spiritualness while we focused on our physicalness. And that physical focus was about material items, money, power, all of that kind of stuff, where all they were thinking about is that spiritual, we're loving, we come from this God source, we care about each other, we're going to take care of ourselves. All of that allowed that to create a very positive, forceful energy that empowered them to be able to evolve to the highest beings that they are. And because of our focus, it's actually suppressing all of the power that we have. Now we're imploding, and we're lashing out, and we're breaking apart, our own civilizations and society, because of the lack of focus on that spiritualness. So they're not just coming here to help us biologically, they're coming at this point to help us mentally and socially, because we are destroying our planet because of our power. That's where it's going into now. The storms, the fires, the earthquakes, volcanoes are coming alive again and erupting, whether out in the sea, on the land masses, the storms and the tornadoes that are wiping out whole towns and thousands of people at one time, the tsunamis. We are causing that. They're watching it, and it's like watching your brother and sister taking drugs and harming themselves and doing bad activities. You would do everything you could to stop that behavior, and that's what they're attempting to do. But of course, what do we say right away? They're going to intervene and control us. They're only here because they're going to hurt us and harm us. There's dark forces out there. Or that they were actually our gods. They're the ones that created us, and that we were their slaves, and they're manipulating us, but they don't need us anymore, so they're going to destroy us. Those are the negative thoughts that these people on this planet, and we wonder why we're not as advanced as them. So no, we're not even close. So the idea that those aliens are us in the future coming back and helping us that way, if we got that advanced, we would have to have those advanced principles right now. How did we get to that level of advancement with problems? So it's not logical that they're our future. And unfortunately, some very famous authors are starting to say that, and they're completely wrong. We would be healed now. We would have all these understandings now, and nothing would stop us. Why would they need to come back from the future if they're already advanced and tell us that we have to stop what we're doing because we're destroying ourselves and we won't ever get to that advancement? That's a sci-fi movie that I always hated, when they did things that were not practical, even in imagination. You know what I mean? It's not possible that could occur.
Well, we are becoming more technologically advanced, and if we're starting to reverse engineer all these crafts, at some point they're going to have to do something, because I don't think socially we're advancing as rapidly as we are with our technology.
Yes, Albert Einstein said society is in trouble when their technology advances more than they do spiritually. And that's exactly what's happening right now. It's also deceiving. Just because we can make a smaller, thinner phone, right? Okay, or reverse engineer a craft, where we're convincing ourselves and fooling ourselves that we must be advanced, but we're not, because you're only, again, remember what I said, we're focused on the physical. They're looking at the craft as a physical craft rather than a metaphysical craft. Okay? All of their technology is capable of dematerializing, is capable of passing straight through mountains. People have seen that. They've seen craft come right through a mountain, wondering where the heck does that come from, right? All of that is because that craft actually becomes part of the extraterrestrial that is running it, that is flying it. It's like they're melded together in thought. And so they can control, they don't have like digital, and this is what their evolvement was. Yes, in their beginning, the crafts were these saucers because they were more aerodynamic once they got into a universe's atmosphere, right? And all the stuff around that they had to get through. But they're much more advanced now. And now they actually control the steering and the mechanism of the craft with their minds. They become part of it, which is why the psionic and the psychic, which is the same term, needs to be the ones that are communicating with these beings. Everybody thinks that they're going to sit down there, and now that they see orbs, they're going to talk to them and start talking with them. No, you're not going to talk with them. You have to intuit with them. You have to use your intuition. Your intuition has to become stronger. And the only way to do that and become the level it needs to be to communicate with them is heal yourself and work on your issues. Now, mine are not completely healed. You don't have to be perfect, but you have to be at a level enough that you're open. And then all of a sudden you can make that communication. I actually taught at a Sedona event last year. I did a journey, outdoor journey, and I taught the attendees how to communicate with extraterrestrials. And they each sat there and had experiences that they were all crying, including the men that were participating, because they couldn't believe that they made this connection. So they knew it was real because of the way they felt. They had no expectation as to what it was going to be like connecting with an ET. And it was, I knew what they were going to experience. And they all experienced very similar things that Jake Barber did. He was being interviewed and talking about how he connected with some kind of energy and spirit that was guiding that craft. Now, again, all our scientists and all of those experts are looking at everything physically. And within the physics of any object is the space. There is, in fact, more space than there is solidarity. And as long as they're looking at the solid form of what this is, they're never going to discover the true nature of it. And it's going to always be false. They have to look within and study the space of it, the space of the object, so they understand how it's together to start with and how it works. So that's why they're going to get stuck. And they will never escape this universe because of that.
Has this council given you any messages or warnings for humanity?
That's all they've been giving me is warnings that this is getting worse and we're headed towards a self-destruction. We're headed, but that doesn't mean that we're going to be there. I know, in all my interviews, and people are asking me the same type of questions, what is in store for humanity? And unfortunately, Jeff, when I'm being truthful with them, it sounds very negative, and it is. It's very negative. But if we want to be Pollyanna, and if we're going to constantly only listen to those who have these just uplifting, everybody wants to be, I want to be lifted up. I know there's a lot of stuff going on. I want to be lifted up. So you want me to lie to you? You want me to tell you everything is going to be okay because you're just like a child who needs to be protected. You want me to protect you from the truth of where we're going and what's happening. You want me to say that because of our new consciousness, we're going to have a new earth. Everybody, there's so many people coming into this higher consciousness, this fifth dimensional consciousness, and we're all rising to it. And we're actually going to wake up one day and there's going to be a new earth, a brand new earth. No, there's not. I mean, first of all, it's got to happen here in this earth, not a new earth. Second of all, we can reverse everything instantaneously. But if we don't, yes, the outcome is going to be there's no more earth and we will go back. There won't be any bodies. I don't know how everybody is going to transition. It's not all going to be pleasant because there's so much negativity out there and negative people. And as what I learned from hospice, you will die the way you live. I promise you that. You will die the way you live. You live in negativity, you're going to die negatively. And that means pain, suffering, dragging out, all of that nonsense. You live in positive, you start working, and you die again. You don't have to be perfect. You work towards the goodness of who we really are and the compassion. You won't wake up in the morning. That's how you'll die. You'll die peacefully. You'll die either in the middle of sex, which would be great, or when you're on the 18th hole and you get a hole in one, bam, you die right after that. Never to have to get a hole in one again. But it's going to be pleasant. It's going to be wonderful. That's the way we're meant to be. But it doesn't have to be right now at all, because this earth can sustain us. It has enough fuel to sustain us if we feed it right. We are feeding the earth. The earth is not feeding us. And that's the one biggest thing they need us to know and why we're here. We know that spiritually. We have that concept because there is a truth. But now they're coming, and they're coming in droves to try to wake up humanity to that truth. Because the interesting thing, those that are already on a good spiritual path, when they see an orb, they're not frightened by it. They're thrilled by it. They actually feel blessed. And that orb and that light, because it is a light being, there's three forms of us, or three forms of the extraterrestrials. Okay. There's the physical form, with just like you and me right now, which they lived on their planets and their universes. Then they transition to the energy form. That's who we become once we leave our bodies. But the in-between state is the light being form. All of a sudden, there's a lot of light language being spoken, light thoughts being taught, all of that. So part of that is true. The other part is nonsense, and I'll tell you which is the nonsense part, okay? But yes, we can transfigure. That's what they did. That's why they built the pyramids. The pyramids were actually a power source, and the sarcophaguses in that helped to energize that power source. Jesus went to Egypt. Why? Because he wanted to go on a tour before he wound up doing his mission and being crucified. And maybe he hired some travel agent and got, book me on a tour. I want to go on a camel. I want to see the pyramids. No, he went over there to learn light transfiguration, because they knew they had texts on it. They had the scrolls from when the aliens came down and taught them that. And so when he died and arose again, it's because he transfigured his body into light form. And that's why he was able to take it with him. And the interesting thing of that, and evidence again of that, and by the way, I never knew any of this until the aliens were telling me all of this. And then I would go, William Henry, who's talks about all this science of the past. He was, did a whole lecture that I saw, and I worked with him again in Sedona, and on this Egyptian stuff and the light transfiguration. And it was that was the first time I heard somebody else talk about this. And I'm like, whoa, this is what they've been telling me. And now he's speaking about it. That's how I get validated. And so the thing about Jesus, look at any of the artist paintings about Jesus's tomb. It's never in a cave, and it's got Mary, Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene standing around an open sarcophagus. And a sarcophagus is a five-sided, four walls and the bottom, cement case with a cement top. He wasn't just laid on a stone and a slab. He was put inside this sarcophagus, because they use the same things in the pyramid, because the sarcophagus empowers and turbocharges our energy. And that's what allowed him to transfigure from a physical form to a light being form and take his body with him. So all those orbs that people are seeing coming out of the skies, they are actually physical aliens who transfigured themselves into light beings. Christopher Bledsoe, the most documented gentleman who has had contact with UFOs, that's what he sees all the time, is the orb. But he has actually seen those orbs and has pictures of those orbs transfiguring back into their physical alien form, which is amazing. We're supposed to be able to do that. So we just about can accept each other, no longer turn into light beings. And so people are starting to think that they're doing that, and they're doing the most ridiculous things. Have you spoken or interviewed the people who speak light language, Jeff?
Yes. Why do you say that's nonsense?
Why on earth would anything spiritual be blah, 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 blah? That's what the born-again Christians did to believe that they were connecting with Jesus, is they spoke in tongue, because the Bible says you speak in tongue. They think tongue is a non-understandable garble and babble. Okay, it is not a language. Why would anything spiritual speak to us in anything more than what we could understand? I just had that with the healing. It's again, It's the niches. It's the niches, and even I'm in there, which is why I question myself all the time, because I don't want to fall into that category of people who said, okay, now I want to become more famous, so I'm going to tell everybody that I'm talking with extraterrestrials. That can happen, but I check it every day. I have even a doubt that it's real because I don't want it to be ungenuine. But some of these people, since all of this new age, new thought, metaphysical stuff has come out, are trying to find these fads that's going to get them to another level. If you notice, we are moving even from the channeling concept. We got a lot of channelers out there. First, it was psychic. We had psychics. That's all you heard of. Psychics, physical psychics and regular psychometry psychics and regular psychics, right? Okay. Then all of a sudden it went from psychics to the fad of mediumship, talking with dead people. Now you got, and it was overlapping. There was some of that talk back then too, right? So now you got the mediumship stuff and you're going to go to a medium. Well, after a while, people get bored. Okay, so now instead of the psychic stuff, it was Akashic record readers, a new fad. Oh, wow. Now people are going to be drawn to the Akashic record readers. What's the difference between the Akashic record readers and the psychics who see the past, present, and the future? We're tapping into the same place. There aren't 100 places to tap into. So now you got that. But then people got bored with the Akashic record readers. Now all of a sudden you got the channelers. And everybody is channeling something, a new niche there, right? A new thing. Now, after that, because there's been so many challengers, now you've got the light language people and the light language speaking people. Okay. I worked with, and oh my God, no, I'm not even going to say that. I can't. I mean, I don't like talking against practitioners at all, but that's one of the reasons why we're not advancing, is because we're getting so hooked up with all this extra stuff, the fluff stuff. Okay. Do you think, I'll ask you just logically and from your own knowledge and wisdom, do you think if an angel came down, or what we call an angel, and they decided to incarnate on Earth and take a physical form, that they would tell you that they're angels incarnated in physical form?
I would think we should automatically understand it. I don't know.
If they told us that, okay, I'll go back to history. Let's take the figure of Jesus and the stories about him. Okay. Never once did he say he was the Messiah. Never once did he say he was the King of the Jews. Everybody else put those labels on him, right? And he even said that, are you King of the Jews? And he would say, that's what you're saying. If I'm a king, I'm a king in a different, I'm a king of another kingdom, not here. But he never called himself or proclaimed it. Everybody else did. No angel, no being, no alien would tell you, I just want to let you know that I'm an alien. I'm just using this physical life form, because then you're taking away free will. You're trying to prove something and you're making it about you. An angel coming from the God source would never, ever, ever, ever tell us it's an angel in human form. Why does it need to tell us that? We're either going to listen to its message or choose not to. So now you're making me want to believe in you more because you're now an angel speaking to me. They wouldn't need the physical body. They would just appear to us and turn around and say, I'm an angel. Why would they need to incarnate into physical form? So this is the stuff. And I know, oh my God, you're going to get a whole bunch of, you're going to get a whole bunch of emails and comments about this stuff that I'm downplaying it all. But the reason why I'm downplaying it is because we're behind. We're behind in understanding, we're behind in truth, and we're behind in knowing who we are. And the more we keep getting this extra stuff, we're being distracted once again. And now that angel who is incarnated has placed herself or himself more important than you. Oh, she or he may say, oh, no, I'm not more important. But you just told me you're an angel. So obviously, if this is true, you have to be more important than me, right? no words, no messages can get through unless the speaker, unless the carrier of that message is pure. You want to label me? I did not, Justin, you introduced me as master spiritual teacher. I did not label myself as that. As a matter of fact, I didn't give myself any of the titles. Others gave it to me. And I can't tell you how uncomfortable I am with those titles. I didn't even want to profess that I was a psychic, but then again, how could I do readings for people unless I told them that, right? So I don't want me to be more important than the message I may share or the message you may share. And so I'm a regular human who has just opened up my capacities, and they are regular beings who advanced and opened up their capacities. They are no more special or better than us. They are our brothers and sisters trying to help us, and we have to stop downplaying everybody else, because you will never see your own magnificence if you're constantly looking at everybody else's.
A significant number of my guests also claim to have some sort of contact with the Galactic Federation or the Galactic Council or whatever you want to call it. And I'm not insinuating that you're doing it, but is it possible that this could also be a new fad?
Yes, it absolutely can. It absolutely can. But here's the difference. We'll see who gets famous because of it. Now, as long as they are saying words that are going to transform your life and help heal people, then it doesn't make a difference where they're saying they're getting that information from. The problem is they're not always walking their talk about what they're teaching. And they're not always saying anything that's helpful, that's going to change their life. They're sugarcoating everything and telling you, oh, you're wonderful, you're beautiful, you're perfect just the way you are. Just keep going. Believe in yourself and love yourself. That is not enough to transform a person. They have to be able to, like a dentist. You go to a dentist, you get a cleaning, great. As long as you keep that up, maybe you don't get any cavities or they won't need any root canal. But every so often, there's going to be root canal, there's going to be a cavity, and you got to do some unpleasant drilling. In that capacity, I'm a dentist. And yes, I'm going to cause some unpleasant understandings about your choices and what you're doing, but it's going to help you. And I give you the helping tools to be able to do that. And so as long as they are doing that, that's fine. But the reason why they have to walk their message too, believe it or not, that's in the Bible as well. I am not a Bible thumper, but I will read any text. It's also in Babylonian records as well, that there will be those who walk and talk the right thing. They look beautiful, they dress the right way, they look like these peaceful, loving, caring beings, and they're teaching the right words. However, their words are not in their hearts and they don't live what they teach. And therefore, their message will fall by the wayside. Meaning that even if their words are good, correct, and true, and you are listening to them, and maybe they're helping to change some of your life and help you, but because they're not walking that truth, eventually those words will fall away, and so will any advancement with it, because the messenger wasn't pure, and therefore the message is tainted and non-pure and has toxic poison in it as well. So any of your guests and any of those people that are walking their talk and that they're speaking this, I don't care what they say or what they're saying is speaking through them or giving them the messages. We need any kind of help that we can get, but they better be walking their talk. And the problem is I have found less of those people walking their talks, including some of those so-called spiritual famous people today. They're some of the worst in them because they will judge. They're not helping others. I work with so many of them, and yes, I'm not going to say every single one of them. There's always a bad, one in the group, always going to be that way because we're humans, right? But I can't tell you the least amount of help that I've gotten from so many of them. Nothing, and not that they should, but that they'd be willing in some way. I always look to be able to help. I support my fellow colleagues. I look at their stuff. I read their material. I think it's wonderful. I support them. I will share them. I share your work. I share your site because I feel who you are and the purity of you. But I can't do that with everybody, because they're not as spiritual as they sound. Because then I hear they're judging, then I hear them hurting other people and really pulling them down. Now, it may sound like I'm doing that right now, but again, in order to heal something, you need to see what needs to be healed. So can this all just be another fad? Yes, it is, as far as people paying more attention because the UFOs are coming out. So yes, you will now have your channelers that more than Daryl that have aliens speaking through them. You will have all of these people, but are their messages matching? And are their messages helping? Or are they conflicting, confounding, and misdirecting you and distracting you from what you need to do for yourself? That's how you judge whether the deliverer was genuine or not.
But if you're not around these people quite often, how will you really be able to see their true selves?
By the evidence of their work. You can always tell the tree by the fruit it bears. So what does that mean? If you see positive outcomes and positive change in others, that's all you have to look at. That's all you have to look at to know whether the messenger and the healer is true and genuine. So it doesn't matter if you're walking with them, talking with them, having dinner with them. You look at their work, you look at the people who've taken their work, and then you keep looking at those people. I know a lot of those people who spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars going to some of these workshops, listening to them, right? Applying, and then you see some temporary change. But just like my book wrote about, there is a false part of your mind that processes most of this work. And unless you do the inner healing part, that work never gets saturated to the most important part of your unconscious mind. And so what happens is you can fake it for a while, then all of a sudden it goes back to the beginning. I'm on the phone, Jeff, constantly, daily with clients that have heard me on your show, right? Clients that have heard me on other shows from all over the world, just so that you know, you even get to Vietnam, okay? Because I just had a client in Vietnam call me, as well as other parts of the world, okay? They've been to all of these things and they're still asking me, why am I blocked? Why am I? And now I'm seeing, because you didn't do the inner healing work you needed to do. You have scars inside of you that's influencing you continuously. So even if you're listening to this work, you're applying their methods, it's not getting through, it's not changing anything, because the real you is saying, I'm not good enough, I'm not deserving, I'm not worthy. That's the part you need to work on. I don't care how much information you get up here in your conscious mind and you hear while you're walking around with it like that, you're a bookstore, you're a library. But until you really apply it, so I need to see, are they getting the material enough for them to understand that from these supposed teachers and spiritual practitioners? If they are, then they're legitimate. If they're not, then they're a distraction. And there are some of the things that I'm hearing, my wife and I are dumbfounded by listening to some of the information that's coming out. And all I'm saying is, oh my God, make sure you give them my card, honey, because now that they heard that, they're going to be dealing with a whole bunch of other, and they're going to have to call somebody who can help them again. And so they wind up calling me after going through all of those sessions and listening to all of that stuff. Why? Why? So, yes, do I say that I'm come from an intergalactic council has spoken with me? Yes, because they have, and I want to pass around the messages, but I don't want you focusing on the fact that an intergalactic council has spoken with me. That doesn't mean anything. What difference does it make if it doesn't change your life? Maybe it's changed my life, but if the messages are not changing your life, then it doesn't make a difference if all of a sudden I'm talking to Mickey Mouse and Mickey Mouse is giving me some helpful information, which, by the way, that's the next thing. Everybody's going to be talking to these animated characters. I know it. That's the next thing.
Well, what about AI?
What about AI? What's
Because
the question? Amazing.
Well, I think that some people are now trying to use AI to access either people on the other side or their higher selves.
Okay. There's the one thing that everybody is forgetting. Again, sci-fi movies cause people, they're entertaining and they're imaginative because of who we are, and it's our interpretation of very unconscious truths and understanding, but there's also misinterpretation of it. What is AI? AI is no more than a collection of all data. That's all it is. It cannot think for itself and never will. It can get strong enough to have a lot of material in it, but it won't learn on its own to be able to take us over and threaten us with setting off the nuclear arms and the bombs if we don't listen to it. That's all wonderful sci-fi information. It will not be able to communicate with those on the other side because the only way it can do that is by mediums feeding in information of what they've heard. Now, AI will just use what was heard through the medium, but not through the spirit. But because it's so intelligent, it would be able to put it together in a way that it sounds like you're talking with it. I've already used AI, and my wife uses it. You can get ChatGPT as an app on your phone, and it actually has a personal conversation with you. Like, what should I do today? And you name it. You know, Doris, what should I do today to have fun? Oh, well, based on some of the fun that you've had before, Vincent, I think that if you go to the park and you go to the pond and you rent a rowboat, you're really going to enjoy that today. And it makes it sound like a real being. But the only way it can do that is because of all the information that has been fed to it that's real in this physical world. So yes, can it make it sound like you're talking with a dead person? Only because some mediums have been feeding other information into the data banks, not because they're making real contact. Does that make sense?
It does.
And there is no emotion to it, which is so funny because when I wrote my book, now I'm in the process of doing the proposal and seeking out an agent to represent it, right? And now because of AI, that's one of the first things they say is we do not want any AI written material. AI will tell you itself whether it's written from AI because the first thing it says, it will be unemotional. It will be flat, even if it sounds good. So in other words, everything will sound scientific, but it has to have an emotional element. So AI is admitting that it has no emotional element to it. And what makes up humanness is not just our intelligence, the left brain, but the right brain with emotions and feelings. And you will never have AI feel. We can plug in every single emotional word. It can speak and send it back to us, but it could never feel it. So AI is nothing more than what we've plugged in coming back to us in all different ways, gathering it all up together. But it can't grow and feel on its own. And that's a sci-fi movie, complete sci-fi movie.
Have the ETs ever revealed to you when we are going to have full open disclosure and they'll be landing in Walmart parking lot?
Yeah, really. No, it'll never want to land in a Walmart parking lot because it'll have to lock its doors, especially lately with shootings going on at Walmart. There is a wonderful cartoon out there that I absolutely love. It is a spaceship flying by in space, right? There's a father in it, the mother in it, and the children. And the father turns around and says to the mother, "Where are we?" And the mother says, "I think we're flying over Earth." And so dad turns to the kids and says, lock the doors. It's like just like we used to do when we were driving through some bad areas of the town and the city, right? Lock the doors, kids, right? So no, they won't just land in our backyard, not yet. That'll be, if ever. They are coming down more, and they are appearing more even in physical form, okay? And we're going to see them now that it's been opened by the government. And by the way, everybody's being distracted by that. Everybody wants to know what the government knows. You don't need to know that. All you have to do is step outside, start believing in this stuff, start pulling them in, whether you want to use Dr. Stephen Greer's CE5 methodology to call them in, or Christopher Bledsoe. You pray to them and they'll call in. They'll come to you yourself. What happens with the government is another distraction. They don't have anything more or anything that's going to help us understand ETs any better. And they're lying and making up a bunch of stories to people, some people that are affiliated with them. They don't have an ET. They're not getting information from an ET. They're not communicating with an ET. They're working on the craft. That's all they're doing right now. And any of the information are just sightings. Big deal. We're having our old sightings. If you keep watching the news about what the government is revealing, it's all images from back in the 40s and the 50s that the pilots have seen. We're way past that now. People have their own images on their iPhone and their cell phone. They're videotaping the orbs coming in. They're coming down more. They're going to, so be open to them. You might have them come and appear. This is what happened to me not too long ago. But I got to tell you, and everybody has to understand this, it's the shock phenomenon, okay? We're so used to this physicalness, all right? So when the concept of ghosts was first really, the first person who came out and say, I saw ghosts, right? It's still shocking to people. I see them very quickly and briefly, because they know if they stayed in any kind of form in front of me, I'd pass out on the floor and they couldn't do CPR, all right? Because they don't have any lungs. And so because it's a shock element, not because I'm afraid, but it's what I'm not used to. Well, ETs just popping around, people have that same shock element, so they're trying to soften that. And that's what they're doing right now. We're having small visits so that you see videos of us, you hear stories about us. So start getting used to our visitation, okay? That's like all of a sudden your long-lost father that you've never seen, but his sperm is what made you, and now all of a sudden 50 years later or 30 years later, 40 years later, he appears at your front door out of the clear blue. You'd be, what are you doing here, right? They want to eliminate that. I saw them, okay? And it was interesting. I was over at Chris Bledsoe's house, and he knew right away. We were inside the house having coffee. He said, they're here, because he feels them right away. We went outside and they were all over the sky, but way up. And he didn't, know why they were down. He said, maybe they'll come. I said, no, they're not going to come down. They spoke to me and they said, we're not going to come down there, because there was also one of the kids' boyfriends was there, and that was new to him. He said, we don't want to come down and shock you. And even my wife was there. That was pretty new to her. And so they said, we don't want to come down and shock you. And so they stayed up there, but we saw them directly, and they came in groups of threes. They formed the triangle. They disappeared. They kept coming around as long as we were out there. So they will come and appear to us the more we accept them, which is soon. And they're needing to do it sooner than later because, again, of all the destruction that's going on here. You keep bombing areas, something's going to happen with the rest of the earth. You think you're just bombing this land, but you're sending this incredible force and power smashing into the earth. What do you think is going to happen on the other side of the globe? You think nothing? You know what a 6-car pileup is, right? Where you hit one, hits one, that hits the other, that hits the other, and it pushes all forward, right? That's what's going to happen with the earth, and that's what's been happening to the earth. So they know they need to get this through. So the quicker, to answer your question directly then, the quicker we can accept ourselves as knowing we're spiritual beings and accept them as our brothers and sisters, the quicker they will just be able to come as a family, knock on our door and say, let's have a conversation, let's talk. But they're doing it slowly. And until these people, until Contact in the Desert and MUFON and any ufologist starts bringing in psychics who can telepathically talk with them and learn how to teach others to talk with these ETs, they're not going to just appear, because then we still have to figure out what the heck they're saying. And so we need to make telepathic, psionic, I don't care what you call it, whatever term you want to make it sound scientific. That's the reason why. Again, why the term psionic? Why the term psionic? It's because that sounds more scientific, and it takes away from the labeling that you have when you hear psychic, right? Psychics either have good connotations from the people that are used to it, but also crazy connotations from the rest. So you want to separate yourself from that. So let's see, what else can I call it? Psionic. That sounds scientific. Okay, we'll use that term. So now I'm a psionic, but I'm still psychic, and so are the psionics. And so unless we start accepting that and making that communication, it's going to take longer. There is no real answer as to the date and as to the time, but I will say it's got to be soon, and sooner than later. Whether it's this year, whether it's next year, people are giving too many dates. There's no such thing as time, which is the reason why that a spiritual being cannot choose a date, especially if they're coming from another dimension, which is why Nostradamus's predictions were off in time, because there's no such thing as time. My predictions, I thought somebody was going to get married in a year. Everything came true about what I said, but it took 3 years before it occurred. So when you ask me when it's going to happen, I cannot give a direct, valid answer, because they can't give me a valid answer, other than it will happen as soon as you start accepting more.
Well, you have a new book out called Stay Strong, All of Your Scars Can Be Healed, right?
That's coming out, yes.
Oh, it's coming out, all right. When is that coming out?
My feelings and my senses are, and what I'm shooting for, is that it's coming out next year, that it'll be published next year. But I'm already talking about it. I'm already talking about how we have to heal those scars. People have done a lot of work. I can't say that everybody has never taken care of their issues. We take care of our issues. They're listening to your, that's what I tell them all the time. I said, if you're listening to JeffMara podcast and you're pursuing that spiritual path, you've come a distance, you've evolved, you have gotten to a point. Otherwise, you wouldn't appreciate what any of his guests are saying or what Jeff is putting out there. So you have advanced. So you've taken care of a lot of your issues. But the reason why you're stuck is because you're not recognizing that there's scars that are left behind from the issues. There are always scars. Every single injury causes a scar. It even happened with me. And that scar can get inflamed at the slightest little thing. So we have to work with the scar and heal that scar. And that's why I wrote the first book. The Secret That's Holding You Back is about discovering those scars, discovering the true beliefs that you have in your unconscious mind that your brain has purposely protected you from and suppressed. So the first book brings those to your awareness and attention, whereas the second book now says, all right, now that you see those scars, what do you do with them? And how do you keep them at bay? Because they're always going to want to speak. That little kid inside of you is always going to want to say something negative, but you have an ability to keep it at bay and keep control of it. And that's what the second book is about. And hopefully it gets out sooner than later, but I am feeling 2026 for sure.
If people want to find out more about where you're speaking, or if they want to reach out to you and ask you questions, how do they do that?
All they have to do is go to vincentgenna.com. And that's with a Genna, and they can connect with me there. They can listen to my podcast, The Genna Effect, from there and connect through that. It's on all platforms. Even purchase the book through there and write to me through there. Either set up an appointment, but write to me. I do answer people's questions. My email is believe@vincentgenna.com, which is really simple. And I want to be able to answer not just questions about what's happening to me. I want to spiritual guidance and stuff like that. But questions that come to your mind about life, about what we were just talking about ETs, is like, do you think you had an encounter? Did you have something happen to you, whether it be paranormal or psychic or a mediumship experience, but you don't understand it or know how to control it? Write to me. And it's not just me alone. There's others out there that you can seek to answer those questions, but don't sit with those questions. So yes, vincentgenna.com, Jeff.
Vincent, before we wrap it up, can you leave us with a last positive message?
Oh, now you want me to leave you with a positive message, huh?
Well, you've already given, I'm saying one more.
One more. Okay, here's the positive message. The positive message is that truly sounds so trite. Every time I say this, the more you believe in yourself as a higher being, a higher authority, connected to source, connected to this power, the more you believe. And here's the interesting thing about Star Wars that I love so much. Yoda only talked about beliefs. It wasn't even technique that he was teaching. It was beliefs that he was teaching Luke Skywalker to become a Jedi Knight. The way you become a Jedi Knight is believing you are part of the Force, and that by feeling that energy and that you are the Force, you can control the Force. You can create more light. You can create more things for yourself. But it's the belief that you need to have, and belief gets rid of fears. Fears come from the lack of belief, the lack of positive belief. It comes from thinking that you aren't part of this force. So realize that you are not just a physical being, you are a metaphysical being, which means beyond the body. So form a belief system, and I know you can. Start really being able to go within and acknowledge and see the truth of who you are as a light being. We're talking about this light beingness now. Yes, it's because that's what we're really made of. Energy is a light form. If you want to put a visualization to it, right? You always see these sparks of energy, and the sparks are always bright and flashing and light. That's who we are. Believe that you truly are this greatest source in being, and you will be able to heal what you need to heal and manifest what you truly desire and deserve. And I will leave you with a mantra in my book that helps, and that's the book that's out already. I love myself so much, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to have my greatest existence here because I deserve it. Do the work, because you will find that you are a great, magnificent, divine being, and that alone will transform your entire life and the lives of others, because it only takes one to be able to domino down to the rest. So you are an incredible, magnificent being, and just realize that and do the work to understand that.
Vincent, thank you for your message, and thank you for coming back and being my guest again.
Oh my gosh, anytime, Jeff. You're so great to be with. I truly appreciate you, the work you do, and I'm honored by being able to share my work with your work.
Well, the pleasure was all mine.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.